All right, this next lesson in the Paper 3 Weimar and Nazi Germany is the Unit 2 lesson on the Nazi Party, looking at the lean years and their reorganisation in the years 1924 to 1928. So the three things we're going to have to look at throughout this lesson, and we're going to have to look at what we mean by the lean years, look at how Hitler tried to reorganise the Nazi Party throughout this period, and to look at why they didn't gain electoral success during this period of 24 to 28. So firstly, what do we actually mean by the lean years? So very simply, lean years means that during the period 24 to 28, the Nazis did not gain many votes. And as you can see on the table on this slide, in May the 4th, 1924, the Nazis were around 6.5%. December 1924, they were at 3%. And December 1928, they were at 2.6%. And then we see a significant jump, which we're going to look at in future lessons as to why this jump occurred. However, what we need to assess today is, after Hitler was imprisoned from the Munich Putsch, what did he do to be able to make the Nazi Party a force again? And in return for that, how did that work in the long run? But we also need to look at why the Nazis weren't very successful in this time period by looking at a range of factors. So it might be worth, first of all, jotting down the actual election date, because in the exam, this does become very important that you know how many votes and percentages the Nazis were at certain times. If you pause the video, write down the percentage of votes next to each month and year. Don't worry too much about the seats they got in the Reichstag. It's more important to know roughly what percentage of votes they got. So, the first thing Hitler did is that when he was in prison, he actually had a lot of freedom, as we know from previous lesson. In Landsberg prison, he had his own library, he could have visitors whenever he wanted. And this is where he realized that he needed to change his approach. He realized that he couldn't get power by overthrowing the government. He realized he would have to get power by getting it legally. And one of the first ways he was able to do that was by reassessing his ideas. And this leads us to Mein Kampf. So, Mein Kampf basically translates to My Struggle, which was written out by Hitler's deputy, Rudolf Hess. And this basically brought together the Nazi Party ideas. So in your book or on a piece of paper, if you're revising this, write down Mein Kampf ideas as a subheading. And I'm going to go through the ideas in Mein Kampf, and then your job is to summarize them in 5 bullet points, 10 key words, and then 1 word. So, Hitler believed that the German race, which he called the Aryan race, should rule the world. He said that Jews were a danger to the Aryan race and he had a conspiracy to ruin his master race. He thought the Jews' plan was to marry Germans and take over the businesses. Mein Kampf said that Hitler wanted to restore the power of Germany by reversing the Treaty of Versailles and stressing about the need for Lebensraum, which is living space for German people. So it basically said that Hitler wanted to gain the land back that they'd lost in the Treaty of Versailles and also reverse the treaty to make Germany more powerful again. Hitler also spoke about the need to invade Russia to the east of Germany to drive out the communists and provide land for German farmers to feed the nation, which would have gained a lot of support from the middle class, the big businessmen, as they were scared of the idea of communism, as it meant they would have had to share their wealth. However, there were some socialist aspects. There were some left-wing ideas in Mein Kampf that were removed later on. Hitler said that the wealth of industry should be used to benefit the German working people, not rich landowners. Remember, to gain success in an election, you need to win over a vast group of people. And the working class were a big group of people that needed winning over. In Mein Kampf, Hitler also said that idea of totalitarianism, the idea that democracy should be removed as it was weak. Hitler believed having a dictatorship and that all the power should be put in the hands of the state, having one leader to organize everything for the benefit of the people. And traditional German values, so strong family values, clear male and female roles, men working, women with their families. Mein Kampf talks about traditional culture. Now, when this was obviously written and produced and then circulated, you need to remember that 24 to 29 was a period of prosperity for Germany because of the golden years, because of Stresemann, standard of living had improved, culture had changed dramatically, and a lot of it would have gone against Nazi ideology. But this is one of the key reasons why at this stage they didn't gain much power, because things were going well. You're not going to change people's minds if they've got a good life. So your job, pause the video and summarize these ideas in 5 bullet points, 10 keywords, and 1 word. Right, so we've discussed how Hitler developed his ideas in the concept of Mein Kampf. Now we need to look at how the Nazi Party reorganized following Hitler's release from prison in 1924. So we've looked at the early years of the Nazi Party and the fact that they developed some key individuals that helped them, that Hitler was a strong orator, etc., etc. But now we need to look at how they took it one step further, because this Nazi Party, this sort of rebooted Nazi Party, had a different approach to power. Their approach to power was basically get votes to get power, which was vastly different to before, because remember, during the Munich Putsch, they tried to overthrow the government, which didn't work at all. So I'm going to put a load of things on the board that the Nazis actually did. And then what you need to do is explain how this would help the Nazis for each aspect of reorganization. So Hitler set up party headquarters in Munich. He made sure that the party was set up like a mini government with Nazis in different roles, such as finance, foreign affairs, agriculture, and education. Well, how's this going to help? Well, first and foremost, if you set yourself up like a mini government, it means you will be ready to take over if you get enough votes. And also, it does make them look very professional to an extent, because it looks like they are ready. It looks like they've got a clear plan, which a lot of people would have liked in a time of crisis. Unfortunately for the Nazis, that time of crisis wasn't at this stage. So having a mini government means you'll be ready to take over if you get enough votes. It shows them to be professional, and it basically means they've got that political infrastructure, which is really important. And the next one, Hitler set up a military unit known as the German Women's Order, and he created the Hitler Youth, not Hitler Young, a group of 14 to 18-year-old boys to be trained to be loyal, strong Nazis. This was Hitler's way of appealing to a bigger group, and by winning over women and children, it means he will have a more loyal base of supporters if the Nazis were to come to power. Franz Schwarz was appointed as party treasurer, which means he was in charge of money, to make sure that the Nazis had plenty of financial backing for propaganda and overall running of the party. Finance is vital to electoral success. If you want to be a successful political party, you need money for propaganda, as the propaganda wins voters over. So having someone in charge of it means that Hitler could focus on other areas of the party, and he oversees it. But having someone in charge of it meant that that's one less thing for Hitler to worry about. Germany was split into 35 Gauers, which was a region. Each leader of a Gauer was a local Nazi leader. These men would force their way to the top to spread the Nazi message, including Joseph Goebbels. It basically means that the Nazis are not just one man. It gives Hitler the chance to spread his word through a group of loyal individuals who follow the same ideas as Hitler. And by splitting it across Germany, it means they're going to have more of a spread of voters when it comes to elections. Hitler changed party finance by getting support of big businessmen who were scared of communism. They received huge loans from individuals such as Krupp and Bosch. Remember what I said previously, money equals propaganda. Propaganda equals electoral success, and people hearing about your party. Hitler created the SS in 1925. He didn't trust the SA fully. There were issues, and Hitler fired Rom, their leader, but he did make him the leader again later on. The SS were specially selected. They wore black, and they were Aryan. This was basically Hitler's way of developing further organization. And by having a group that were loyal, this group could disturb and disrupt opposition. The Nazis could be feared as time went on. And it just means that in general, the SS were going to be that always there watching over people. Now, this next one is probably one of the most important ones. Now, Hitler called a conference in Bamberg in 1926 to unite the Nazi Party. Some Nazis wanted to put left-wing ideas in the party, but this event here was Hitler's way of removing left-wing ideology. And it was also Hitler's way to make himself the ultimate leader of the party. He spoke for 5 hours and developed full control, enforcing his ideas and removing the left-wing ideology, meaning workers were not going to benefit. Hitler was free to present his own ideas. Basically, he got back the power he had before the failed Munich putsch, which means he could then start rebuilding from within. And then by 1928, the party had 100,000 members. It was a national party. Being a national party means that people will listen and take note of the changes that were being made. This is how Hitler reorganized his party. Now, if you were to get a really nasty question in the exam, you might get explain how the Nazis reorganized their party in the years 1924 to 1929. And then you'd have to write about 3 of these things and explain how it helped Hitler reorganize in the long run. Right, the last thing from this lesson is a 12-marker focus again. Explain why the Nazis failed to get power in the years 24 to 29. And it's very clear that despite all the reorganization methods that the Nazis put in place, they were still so far away from power, 3%. And we can only really look at this as to 3 reasons. 1, the Nazis didn't have support of the working class, which are a huge group that represented the electorate. 24 to 29 was a time of peace and prosperity. And point 3, the Nazis' ideas were too extreme. I want you to write these 3 points down and leave about 6 lines in between. I'm going to put some statements on the board, and your decision is to decide which point it would go into in the exam. You will then write down the evidence, summarize it, and then in a different colored pen, explain how that failed to get them power. So what you're doing here is you are building a very generic point, evidence, explain, structure, which will help you in any given question in this exam. These are the statements. So the great majority of workers supported the Social Democrats and more moderate parties. Straight away, this is talking about how the Nazis failed to get support from the working class. And also you could argue that the Nazis' ideas were extreme, but because more working class were voting for more moderate middle parties, it meant the Nazis weren't going to get significant votes. The workers who do want major changes seem to be voting more for the communists rather than the Nazis. Again, this is showing that they didn't get support from the working class because the communists offered that more freedom and sort of potential to be more wealthy for the working class. American loans helped the economy to recover. Since 1923, inflation had eased, employment had increased. Many workers feel they were doing quite well. Obviously, those American loans that I'm referring to are the loans that Stresemann got through the Dawes Plan. And hyperinflation had eased in 1923 because of the introduction of the Rentenmark and the fact that the workers in the Ruhr were asked to go back to work and passive resistance was called off. Number 3 is obviously talking about prosperity. The Weimar government seemed more acceptable to Germans with the election of military hero Paul von Hindenburg as president in 1925. His reputation restored confidence in the Weimar. So because the Weimar had a key figurehead at the top, then more people supported them. I mean, you could argue that this is a time of prosperity because the man at the top is someone who's accepted by the majority of Germans. The period saw a gradual rise in the standard of living in the German people. So what we're talking about there is German people were the best paid in Europe, their wages going up 10%. We're talking about more housing, GHAG building around 100,000 homes. We're talking about how women became more of this new woman, more sexualized, more free. Tradition no longer dominated the norm of society. Theatre put on plays that criticised old German way of life, paintings commented on society and were accessible to the public, literature had a social message, and music reflected modern issues. Again, peace and prosperity. Same with number 7, people had a lot more freedom than under the Kaiser. You could definitely talk about the role of women there. More people are members of the Nazi Party than ever before. However, most Germans don't appear to be attracted to the Nazi Party. This could be because their ideas were very extreme. And then number 9 and 10 talk about peace and prosperity, about the role of Stresemann. Stresemann building better relationships with other countries, for example, joining the League of Nations, the Kellogg-Briand Pact, all really important. And the Nazis only had 1% of the working class vote in Berlin. Even though the economy was very strong, workers didn't vote for the Nazis. As a bit of practice, once you've done this task, you can practice writing a appeal paragraph to the 12 marker that we mentioned previously. So that's what you'll need to know for this lesson on the lean years and Nazi reorganization.